So I am director also of the World Sustainability Organization, which launched the Friend of the Sea and Friend of the Earth certifications. Friend of the Sea stems from the Dolphin Safe Tuna project of the Earth Island Institute, and it's a certification of products from sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. Friend of the Earth is a certification of products from sustainable agriculture and farming. Over 1,000 companies worldwide from more than 100 countries have products certified by one of these certifications. So, apparently, from a recent study by Harrison and Hall, it is confirmed that there is a strong relation between our empathy towards fish and phylogenetic relatedness. In other words, in simple words, the more different from us in size and shape, expression, the less empathic we feel for certain groups of species or animals. For this reason, fish are very low in our empathy scale, considered almost at the same level as invertebrates, insects, and so on. In fact, some aquatic species are invertebrates, such as crabs, lobsters, sea urchins, jellyfish. To be selectively empathic to other species based on phylogenetic can be a bit tricky, as it is very subjective. It is not really based on science. In fact, science is providing with increasing evidence that not only fish, but also other aquatic species have very well developed senses, social life, and intelligence. A study titled Fish Intelligence, Sentience, and Ethics by Colin Brown sums up all available scientific evidence, and it explains how, for example, fish can see like or better than humans. They have a sense of smell which is up to 10,000 times better performing than humans, for example, in sharks. They can hear a wider range of frequencies. They even have additional inputs, like the lateral line, which gathers vibration information and sends it to the brain via the inner ear to be processed. Some fish are electrogenic. They produce electricity, and electroreceptive. They detect and respond. They can use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate. Most of these senses are, of course, very helpful for them to avoid the predators. All this information is described in much more detail in Fish Intelligence, Sentience, and Ethics by Colin Brown, 2013. Now that we learned that fish have same or even more and equal or even better senses than humans, let's see how they performed in experiments to verify their actual. Well, science has provided evidence that fish can learn and it can have a long-term memory. For example, rainbow fish, which lives an average of 2 years, has proved to remember escape routes for 1 year. They live in social groups where they teach skills to each other. Social traditions are, for example, thought to be responsible for the migration routes of several species of fish, including cod. This is the slide that little empathic we are towards fish, and how our empathy is basically at the same level as invertebrates. And as I was saying, they have a better vision, better olfaction, better hearing than humans, and they also use a lateral line, which provides them with a high degree of sensitivity. Some fish are electrogenic and electroreceptive. They detect and use the Earth's magnetic field. And now that we have learned the power of their senses, There's more scientific evidence which provides clues to their capability of, for example, have long-term memory. For example, rainbow fish, which lives an average of 2 years, has proved to remember escape routes for 1 year. They live in social groups where they teach skills to each other. Social traditions are, for example, thought to be responsible for the migration routes of several species of fish, including cod. Shifting cod spawning grounds seem to be the result of the systematic removal of older, knowledgeable individuals by commercial fishing. Fish cooperate also with different species. There is a very interesting video of cooperation between a grouper and a moray eel going hunting together. Other classical examples are those of the cleaner wrasse and clients. Fish can recognize humans, as any goldfish owner knows. They recognize kins and self-recognize using both visual. They build nests, sometimes, as in the case of tilefish, up to 1 meter high. They also use tools. In fact, a number of species of wrasse use rocks to crush sea urchin or shells, so as to access the meat inside. Last but not least, fish respond to pain. Fish have all the hardware associated with pain perception, and the application of analgesics, in fact, reduces the symptoms. I'd like to show a couple of images which provide us with a graphic idea of the skills of certain fishes. And this, for example, is a nest built by a 5-centimeter male pufferfish. So this gives an idea of their capacity to build tools and somehow to create art, I would say. This is an image of a tuskfish using tool, using a clam to break another clam, or using a stone to break a shell. So why should we be concerned about fish welfare and the humane treatment of animals? Because fish and aquatic species in general are the most exploited worldwide. For example, an estimated 3 trillion of fish are either farmed or caught every year. This is 1,000 times more individuals than mammals like cows and pigs. Some of them are caught in the wild, approximately half to our estimate. So our impact on their welfare implies a certain level of complexity, which is still quite unknown. I try here to provide a table for reference on the potential impact of fish welfare generated by the main fishing methods. The impact can occur on the target species or on the bait if it's used, on bycaught species, and as with bottom trawling, indirectly by impacting the seabed, the fish habitat. Fish feel fear, panic, pain, sometimes for several hours when caught with gears such as long lines, gill nets, and one can expect a lower impact in terms of fish welfare when purseines are used or pollen lines. This is by no means a definitive table, but just a starting point for further case-by-case analysis and possible improvements. In fact, some of the suggested improvements in fisheries consequently include not using live fish as bait, reducing the time fish are held in the gear and on the deck, reducing injury and stress during capture and hauling. The type of net used, of course, can have an impact, and also the type of hooks used. Humane slaughter techniques, of course, improve the fish welfare in these last moments of their lives. And of course, seabed habitat can have an improvement in welfare on those fish which are not caught, are not fished. But how much are consumers willing to pay for animal welfare food, and in particular for seafood farmed or caught in a way that considers fish welfare? There are several studies available with different dates. Some are more recent, some are not. And these are those we found. Apparently, countries like Norway, where the issue of aquaculture is more widely discussed over the years, appear to have higher willingness to pay more, around 84%. And for fish, even though Norwegians in this study kind of request support from the government to cover these higher costs, and 15 cents per more from 15 cents more for a kilo of farmed salmon. UK, 73% are willing to pay more, 65% in France, 48% in Denmark, and in the US, Americans are willing, apparently from this study, to pay 5% more, at least 44%. So there is some willingness to pay more, but what are the costs implied? This can be summarized in this table, and of course these include the cost for the implementation to improve the fish welfare, to monitor this implementation, to monitor the welfare and the changes, feed costs, labor costs, fingerling costs, and so on. And this should be compared to the premium price that can be sold to work out the potential profit or non-profit. And there's a study which is the Benefish project, which actually studied for some cases in Norway, in the UK, the actual economic return of these changes. And apparently for 5 implemented measures, such as CO2 stripping, protein skimmer, changes in the technology and methodology, out of 5 interventions, 4 led to economic benefit for the companies. And Mr. Heinz-Peter will tell us a little bit more about, and in a more updated way, about the results and the methodology of the project, which has been carried out together between Friend of the Sea and Fair Fish, and which was supported by Open Philanthropy. Thank you.
So, hello everybody. Let me shortly tell you what you will go to listen in the next about 10 minutes. I will shortly introduce you to who is Fish, what do we do. Then I come back very shortly to some of the slides Paolo Bray already explained. I will present you FishEthoBase, one of the main products of the Fish International Association. Then let's look into the cooperation between Friend of the Sea and Fair Fish. And then I will explain to you our approach to What are the results of our cooperation so far, and what will recommendations we produce out of this cooperation? What will they look like? FishEthoBase is a small association founded in the year 2000 in Switzerland as a Swiss association, and it has been then founded on an international level as FishEthoBase International Association, which I represent. The goals of both associations are to improve welfare of fish in fisheries and aquaculture, sustainability of this production in fishery and in aquaculture, and fair trade and social welfare of the fish. FishEthoBase Switzerland has about 300 members, 3,000 donors, mostly smaller ones, and has a turnaround of about 150,000 euros per year. FishEthoBase International, FishEthoBase Net, is very small, it's just 6 members, at about 12 donors, which are foundations, and a yearly turnaround of at about 250,000 euros. We started, before we created this foundation, we started already in 1997 with tests in cooperation with Swiss fishermen and farmers to see what would be possible to put into a guideline. It was done on the ground. This is one of our beliefs. We have to do it on the ground before we do it on the desk. From 2004 to 2010, we had a project with artisanal fisheries in Senegal, which we had to leave then because there was no cooperation of the market in Europe. So we ran out of money and we had to shut it down. But the experience is still there. How can we have a fair trade fishery with much respect to the animal in a third world country? This is still here and it's still unique. Then, as always, we ran various campaigns in Switzerland. In 2013, we started FishEthoBase, which I will tell you what it is exactly later. And as of this year, these scientists and experts around FishEthoBase start as a Fish Ethology and Welfare Group in a cooperation with the CCMR Institute of the University in Faro. This is one of the big marine research institutes. What do fish feel? As Paolo Bray already told, there is, it depends on the species, but they have, at least in all species, fish species explored so far, you know they are consciously can feel pain, as we do. They are able to learn, they develop a personality, or in a more scientific way, we say they have their own coping style, so they develop their own methods how to react on something which is not in favor for them, for instance. And the main conclusion out of the research done so far, it's a very new branch of science. It is really a mere question of means and of time, of course, for research, until there is proof that virtually any fish species or even any invertebrate has such traits. So we have to be conscious about that fishes feel in a way what we feel, what our cat feels, what our dog feels, in their specific way. And I can only recommend you two books which give you much insight, aside from the one already cited by Paolo Bray. These are the two on the foot of this slide. Really worthwhile reading. FishEthoBase has been started in 2013. The idea is to gather all scientific knowledge on the of all species farmed, which is about 450 species nowadays. To gather all these findings, to collect them and interpret them in order to produce suggestions. What can you do as a farmer to improve the welfare of your fish? And the approach is going from the natural behavior from the fish. We are trying to get as much findings from natural behavior to build the ecological profile of species X. We can also provide a fish ethos score, which indicates what is the potential of species X's welfare under farmed conditions. What can I do to reach this potential? And you will then see, if you look in the details on FishEthoBase net, it's all open access, free access. You will see there that there are species with a higher potential of experiencing welfare than others. So this could also be for the future a hint which species to choose for aquaculture. Friend of the Sea and Fairfish have a longer story of cooperating with each other. Friend of the Sea helped us in this project in Senegal with the rating on the fish stocks, which stocks should we just avoid, which is overfished. The other way around, we helped in Friend of the Sea communication in German-speaking countries. Me personally, I helped Friend of the Sea in marketing in these countries. Then, more or less 2 years ago, Friend of the Sea addressed us, invited us, and said, could our research team help them to develop welfare criteria? And in the end, Open Philanthropy Project, Silicon Valley-based foundation, funded this cooperation, and here we are. So, as I said, we do not design any welfare criteria in the office, just thinking what would be nice for the fish. So, we decided in this project, first, certified farms, those who accept our visit. We do a first visit to make a sort of a gap analysis between what we see on the ground, in their tanks, in their raceways, whatsoever, and what we see based on our scientific research, what would be the natural behavior of the fish, and what are the natural needs of these species. And the farmer gets a report after the visit with suggestions, with recommendations, what could he do in his farm to improve the welfare of the fish. Half a year after he got the report, in a second visit, we discussed with the farmer what suggestions and what not and why. And only then, only based on this experience of these two visits, will we propose welfare criteria to Friend of the Sea, which they decide if they want to add it to its certification scheme or not. Short overview on the results after the first visits. Here is it with 24 farms. We have some more farms visited since, but the reports are not finished yet. And you see the red ones are the issues of high severity to fish welfare, and the top one is humane slaughter. This is, for most of the visited farmers, this is an obvious problem. They already thought about that, but it's not. We try to help them, to give them some advice how they could address the problem. And environmental enrichment is quite a big issue. Also there we have to help them develop methods to cope with that. How could they build shelters? How could they give a substrate if needed by the species? This is still much research and development to do. Then in the medium severity issues, the top one is welfare training. So practically most of the farms visited, they have training, so that at least one staff member has a training in it and can give this knowledge to the team member. Last one, what could these recommendations look like? What could be the criteria in the end in the Friend of the Sea standard? So for human slaughter, it's quite clear fish should not be led to asphyxiation. They must be unconscious before they get killed, and it depends much on the species, depends also a little bit on the farm. What method of stunning is best? Standard now is by electricity, but there are some other methods now under development for specific species. So we have to look in the individual cases, and the FishEtho group of Fish will help in this investigation and in order to find the best species appropriate solutions. Second example is fish welfare training. This might become a requirement in the Friend of the Sea standard. I don't know. We will propose that. And the FishEtho group is now on the way to develop a specific fish welfare training program for farm staff, for persons who control fish welfare, for the auditors, because for all these people it's quite a new issue. So, just to make clear, this is work in progress now. So we have not yet finished all the first visits on the farms we want to see. We have begun with some second visits with quite astonishingly good results. So the majority of these farms is ready to do something, have already undertaken some path in the direction of improvement of fish welfare. This is very promising, and we hope to come to the end of this program by end of this year with a proposal of criteria which we hope Friend of the Sea will then integrate in their standard. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Bilo. And I see there's still a lot of people among the attendees. Yes, we actually have been surprised by the number of companies which have already decided to implement fish welfare measures among those METs. And this is definitely encouraging, and this means that we will be even more motivated now to adjust the existing animal welfare requirements and add other requirements to our friend of the sea certification requirements for aquaculture to cover all the fish welfare aspects. So let me check if there are some questions pending, and yes, there are. Yes, I apologize. In the beginning, I wasn't able to show the PowerPoint. Let's see. Some of you just dropped in some technical issues. Okay, we have one question until now, only one question from Chile. How many times need fish for learning to feeding? Well, this is, let's say, more scientific, specific question, but yes, there are some answers in the studies that we have gone through. There are some let's say, experiments which have been carried out, and one of the papers which I mentioned, the one from Dr. Brown, actually provides some answer in the section related to learning, and apparently some of the fish learn after only 12 days some of the social lessons provided in terms of skills, also about feeding. And we've been suggested by our scientific department also another paper which is called Enrichment Promotes Learning in Fish, and from David A. Strand and others. So let me see. I see there are some other questions dropped in. Let me see if I can go through. Where somebody is sending questions regarding the cost, annual cost involved in order to be certified friend of the sea. Well, as we are here, yes, there are some costs. Some are related to the audit, and they depend on the complexity of the audit. And some are related to the royalties fees in case the company is certified or the product is certified. And these costs are available on our website on the apply area, and you can see the price list there. It depends also on the revenue of the company, the number of products, and so on. Then somebody has asked, you mentioned some companies are already showing interest in having fish welfare standards. Are some markets more interested than others? I let Bilo answer to this if you have some ideas.
Yeah, there was already an indication of kind of an answer in your slide, Paolo, with these consumer surveys, who would be ready to pay more for a fish from a farm where you can say these fish were happier than others, to say it like that. And I mean, this is also a picture, if the consumers are ready and look for it, so the market will look for that too. at least the retail chains of these companies, like many European countries, they will look more and more for that too. I'm pretty sure, I'm a Swiss guy, so I'm pretty sure the big retail chains in Switzerland are already having their antenna on this issue.
And in terms of the companies which had shown interest, we carried out these visits on animal welfare by ethologists of fair fish within the project that was mentioned in companies worldwide, but mostly in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, in Australia, in Croatia. So in most of these areas, there's been some certain level of interest from the companies to implement these measures.
Yeah.
So there's a question from a company. It is possible to have this presentation. Yes, surely we will send the presentation to all of you. When you need to recommend any specific issue, do you rely on your experience in literature, or do you have means to do some research?
All of it, of course. I mean, there is already research pointing at some crucial issues for fish welfare. There is observation of our researchers, of others, on the ground, at the farm. And the most important for us now in this project, together with Friend of the Sea, is to see what is really feasible in a farm. It makes no sense to design any requirements which are in a way nice to have, but they have no reality because the farmer can't do it, or he can't do it because of the costs whatsoever. So it has to be feasible to make also the difference for the fish. If we prescribe anything which is not feasible, it makes no difference for the fish.
And someone else is asking below, how many farms have been visited by fair fish, and what kind of farms, in countries and size?
This is presented on the slide I showed. Let me have a look.
Well, the total number of companies.
The total number of companies visited now is something like almost 30, but it will be more. We aim to have 45 to 50 companies, farms visited twice.
In countries?
Countries we have so far, let me see. Italy, Spain, Croatia, Slovenia, Turkey, Greece, Germany, France, UK, Norway, and have been some others. Will be Panama next month, if I'm right.
Panama and also in Oceania, right?
Yeah, also Oceania and in East Asia.
In terms of size, we go from the biggest ones in their area of production in sea bream or sea bass or cobia or others, and down to smaller sizes like the trout farms. I visited also myself. I accompanied the ethologists in northern Italy. Which then provide to a cooperative, so a big number of relatively smaller farms.
So the idea generally is to have as much species as possible covered and as much continents as possible.
And that's an interesting question. Do you think animal welfare would be applicable to fisheries too? I think from my presentation you see that there are some issues. We are aware that some fisheries For example, the lake fisheries in New Zealand already have implemented measures, and they are Friend of the Sea certified. They already implemented animal welfare measures to, for example, have a humane killing and stunning of the fish. Definitely this is applicable to fisheries too, and consumers, as you know, are more and more interested regarding where the product is coming from, as well as seafood and how it's farmed, how it's fished. So this is definitely part of the picture.
May I add that fish welfare in fisheries has been the starting point for fair fish, and it has been the main point in our work about 10 years ago, when we had this project in Senegal with artisanal fisheries, which was about fair trade, but it was also about respect for the animal, to have a short duration of the catch and to stun the fish the moment it gets on board. And if you want to have an eye on that, there are our instructions for artisanal fisheries in Senegal, developed for Senegal, but it could be applicable to all artisanal fisheries worldwide. And you will find that if you go on the website of fair-fish.net, and then you have there in the navigation on the left, you have the topic guidelines. And then you have there the guidelines we developed for fishery and the ones we developed for farming.
Okay, so I see there are no more questions. Some questions are related to the Friend of the Sea certification. So there is a company asking us, producing nutraceutical products and cod liver oil, asking us if it's possible for them to contact their suppliers to be Friend of the Sea. Definitely feel free, and please contact us for any other information of this kind. So I would close the webinar here, and I really appreciate you attending the webinar in such a big number from so many different countries. We had over 100 applications, and we will be in touch with you. We will send you the video of the webinar as well as the PowerPoint with all our contacts, and please contact us on LinkedIn if you want to stay in touch, and feel free to send us some additional questions if you wish so. Thank you very much, and we'll be in touch and see you hopefully in the next webinar. Thank you.
Bye.